So in order to understand the various printing processes, we must first ask ourselves, what is a printing process? A reproduction method by which an original is reproduced in mass quantity. This is generally accomplished by using something called an inked image carrier. And each end-use requirement is different in terms of what we're producing. All the printing processes are unique in some fashion, and it may be how they look, feel, or function. The uniqueness of each printing process lies in the image carrier, which is the physical means by which the ink or toner is carried and transferred to the substrate. An image carrier has two distinct areas, the image area and the non-image area. The image area is coated with ink and the non-image area remains clean. The separation of these two distinct areas is what forms the image that is actually printed. Examples of image carriers are printing plates, cylinders, and screens. So what is a substrate then? A substrate is any base material with a surface to which the ink or toner will adhere. Substrate is also called stock. A substrate is really any surface that can be printed or coated, such as paper, plastics, foil, wood, metal, cloth, and many others. The substrate is basically whatever it is we're going to be printing on. So now that we've defined what a printing process is, and we've covered some basic terminology, now let's get into what the major printing processes are. The major printing processes include letterpress, flexography, gravure, screen printing, lithography, and non-impact printing, including digital. Let's start with letterpress. Letterpress printing was how printing was originally produced in mass quantity and was invented by Johann Gutenberg in the mid-15th century until the 19th century and remained in wide use for books and other uses until the second half of the 20th century. Letterpress printing remained the primary way to print and distribute information until the 20th century when offset printing was developed. So letterpress is a relatively obsolete printing process today. You might be surprised to know that the first mass-produced printed piece, if you will, was the Gutenberg Bible. This was the first major book printed using mass-produced movable metal type, which is what letterpress uses, in Europe. It marked the start of the Gutenberg Revolution and the age of the printed book in the West. Letterpress is a relief process. When you think of what relief printing is, just think about how a rubber stamp works. The wrong reading image, meaning that the image is backwards, comes into direct contact with the substrate, creating a right reading image on the paper. The basic concept of what is called relief printing is how letterpress works. In the illustration, A is the block text or image carrier and wrong reading. B is the paper, and the thick black lines are the inked areas. Now the thickness of the ink is actually greatly exaggerated for illustration. Here we see two letterpress designs. The letterpress on the left is the rotary design, meaning the image carrier is on a curved surface, and on the right is the platen design, meaning the image carrier is a flat surface. The platen design was the original invention. The rotary design came along years later. The rotary design was significant because of speed. The rotary design allowed us to print images more quickly and more efficiently than the platen design. On the previous slide, we saw the first printing press. On this slide, we're actually looking at the first piece of, well, pre-press equipment. This is called a linotype machine, and this was a way to automate setting type. Prior to this machine, all type had to be set by hand. Think about that for a minute. Think about setting an entire page of type, each letter, each punctuation, one at a time. It was a very time-consuming process. This linotype machine automated that process and made, quote, prepress a little bit more efficient. So letterpress is a relatively obsolete printing process. It doesn't have very many advantages except for maybe aesthetics. A disadvantage, of course, is the amount of time that it takes to prepare the image. Very, very time consuming and a very expensive printing process. Again, by today's standards. This printing process is digital printing. Digital printing, when compared to all of the other printing processes, is relatively new and is a rapidly developing technology. It has evolved in quality and performance much faster than any of the other printing processes that we've discussed in this module. It's commonly used for short-run jobs, and sometimes it's referred to as on-demand since jobs can be printed as they're needed. Some of the common products include books, flyers, newsletters, postcards, mailers, labels, and signs. All of the other printing processes that we've talked about use a fixed image carrier, and every printed sheet looks the same until you change that image carrier out, like the gravure cylinder, or a flexographic plate, or an offset lithographic plate. A digital press uses a marking engine which must redraw the image for every sheet that gets printed. What's the major benefit to this? The ability to print very personalized, customized pieces, also known as variable data printing, or VDP. Each sheet can be totally unique that is printed on a digital press. One digital printing technology is digital toner, and this is how it works. Essentially, you have a photoreceptive drum that is given a positive charge and a negative charge. In this case, the positive charge is the image area, and the negative charge is the non-image area. We have toner particles that are also given a charge. In this case, the toner particles are given a negative charge that are attracted to the positive charge on the drum, thus creating the image that will be eventually transferred to the substrate. We will discuss how digital toner works in a little bit more detail in a later module, but these are the basics. With digital printing, not only do we have toner-based printing, but we also have inkjet technology. Inkjet technology can consist of continuous inkjet, which use continuous inkjet heads that shoot a constant stream of precisely metered inkjet droplets, which are sent to the paper or deflected and recycled for later use. We also have drop-on-demand inkjet heads, and as the name indicates, drop-on-demand inkjet heads fire inkjet droplets as they are required. Some advantages of digital printing is the ability to print jobs on short notice because of the quick turnaround time. For short runs, digital printing is very economical in terms of print production. But the biggest advantage of digital printing is the ability to print variable and personalized printing or content. Disadvantages of digital printing are some size limitations, mainly on the toner-based devices. And also disadvantages are speeds, although the speeds are faster with inkjet, but they're still slower when compared to offset printing.